welcome to Talk Time. One of the most loosely used words nowadays is depression and mental health. There are very few people who are actually victims of mental health know that they have a mental health issue. The caregivers of majority people are unaware of the problem that people have with mental health. We all consider that mental health is either depression or just anxiety. There are far more issues and reasons that come under mental health. And to understand that better, today on Talk Time, I decided that we should have someone who is an actual expert who can actually answer some of the basic questions that we guys usually go around. It's one of the most famous Instagram videos that we see of a person looking very happy. And underneath, when we read a caption, it says, "This is what depression looks like. The person committed suicide the very next hour." We do not want that people like this suffer without being unaware that they're undergoing an illness. So, to understand that better, today I'm joined with Sonakshi Bhargava. She's a psychologist and a therapist. Let's hear from her and understand mental health better via her. A very warm welcome to Talk Time, Sonakshi. Sonakshi, first and foremost, something that I really want to ask you is what is mental illness? It is something which people are still very unaware of. People don't really understand it well enough. So, someone like, an expert, a psychologist like yourself, if you have to explain to my viewers what is mental illness, how would you define it?
Okay. So I think mental illness is when you're suffering from something which might have a cause or might not. It can be in the way that changes in sleep patterns. For example, if you feel that you've been sleeping excessively, which is more than 12 hours a day, as usual, people sleep between 6 to 8 hours, but sometimes you just don't have the energy to wake up or to get out of bed or to feel motivated to do anything. Changes in perhaps your eating patterns when you feel like you're eating very less or eating a lot more than what is usually the required amount. It could also be in a way of disinterest in things that you felt happier doing previously. So, mental illness is, it could be from some sudden change that has happened in your life. It could also be something, sometimes it has no cause, and people just start feeling low and demotivated generally. It could be in a lot of forms. Yeah.
So, actually, being depressed,
Yeah.
I'm feeling depressed. I am depressed. This person looks depressed. This is something that we very commonly hear. But I think the biggest problem is none of us really know what being depressed actually looks like. Does being depressed have a face?
Right. So sometimes I think we use the phrase feeling depressed as compared to just feeling low or feeling bad. Like we have good days, we have bad days. So I think commonly this term is used in a non clinical manner very casually. But when we say that someone has clinical depression, it is for a period of at least 3 to 6 months. So if you feel a significant lowness in their mood for 6 months, if you feel a change in your appetite for a period of 6 months, if you feel like not meeting people for 3, 4, 5 months, when we know that it's been for more than 90 days, we can term it as something which is clinically depressed and which is not something that you're just feeling, about in, for example, low, you know?
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you're diagnosed as clinically depressed,
Mhm.
then there is medication for it, there are therapies for it. What would you suggest, patients and caregivers of people who are clinically depressed?
Right. So I think the first thing is to reach out to a professional, which could be a psychiatrist or a clinical psychologist. They work together. So a clinical psychologist would help with the diagnostic part, would help with the therapeutic part, and a psychiatrist would help if a person needs help in terms of medication. For example, mood stabilizers or antidepressants, anti anxiety medications. So the first thing would be to ask for help and reach out. And I think that's how it can go
Do
ahead.
you think people really ask for help and reach out nowadays?
Yes, I do think so. I think I have clientele across generations, which could be from teenagers to people who are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, which would be a generation which we say might not be
Yes.
so easily reaching out for things like this. But I think today people are more aware when it comes to signs or symptoms of mental illness or feeling depressed. And they do reach out, I feel. Yeah.
which is a good thing, because that is something that has always been a concern for, especially in our society, because talking about mental illness has always been a taboo. I would really applaud people, especially who are in positions where will come out and talk about mental illness, because it helps people understand better. You talked about anxiety. That's one of the most largely seen, I would say, mental issues which people don't really talk about. It's just people are very anxious. You talked about antidepressants, anxiety medication. What are the signs that you would tell our viewers that, if you are facing this may you might be getting an anxiety attack?
Okay. So I think an anxiety attack or maybe a panic attack is when you feel palpitation, when you feel excessive sweating, when you feel a loss of control over your body, you feel sudden overwhelming. So an anxiety attack would be when you feel sweat coming in your palms, breathlessness, lack of feeling like you might be getting some sort of a heart attack,
Okay.
but it is not a heart attack. It is just your nervous system reacting to a stimulant or some trigger that has happened in the environment. So these are signs when you know it could be an anxiety attack.
And is there an SOS that one should take care?
So I think you mean if someone is suffering from an anxiety
Anxiety attack,
attack?
like for example, if you're in
Yeah.
a situation and you don't really have people around, and you feel that you're getting an anxiety attack, what kind of an SOS can one look for?
Right. So I think first thing would be that you can do grounding techniques, which could be that you can look around you and see things which you can see. Try to use your sensory experiences to make yourself come back to the present. So anxiety is when we are either thinking about our future or worrying about our past, but it never happens if we are really in our present. So
All
the
right.
first thing would be to get your focus to right now. And for example, if I am to get a panic attack right now, right, my focus would be to maybe see things. I can see a cup right now, I can see colors right now, I can see a bottle right now. So the first thing would be to get our focus to what are the things around us, right?
Okay.
And that's how you can get your focus back to the present, and that will help you calm down. Yeah.
Very interestingly, what you said, that anxiety is to do with something that is going to happen or has happened.
Yes.
It's a great thing that you pointed out, because I know a lot of people who get anxiety attacks, and you're very right. It's usually for a situation that's
Yeah.
going to happen,
Yeah.
which causes the anxiety
Yeah.
attack. Talking about what could have happened, that is something that is also a part of toxic relationships, carrying a baggage. Uh, and it's a fact that toxic relationship does not always have to be between a man and a woman. It could be with your parents, with your siblings. How should people deal with toxic relationships? What are things that you would say, these are the five things, if you're facing in any relationship that you have, even at workplace, then it's toxic?
Okay, so facing, for example, if you feel that you are unable to set boundaries, like when you tell someone that no, this is something I'm not okay with, something that's unacceptable to me, they still force on their ideas and maybe manipulate you or gaslight you into following it. Second would be some sort of maybe emotional abuse, or it could be physical or emotional abuse if you're facing in terms of a partnership, or it could be family members or someone at work. That's a clear sign of a toxic relationship. The third would be just following someone else's word, right? So being unable to take your own decisions in that. So these are certain signs when you know a relationship can be toxic, when you're unable to tell them that this is something unacceptable to you. You're also unable to form boundaries and also communicate what you really want to tell them.
In today's day and age, the social media pressure,
Yeah.
especially for teenagers who we know are smarter than what we were, but yet they are still teenagers. They are going through a lot of trouble when you talk about mental illness. You also said you have patients ranging from every age, inclusive of. Uh, what is your, what are the kind of conversations you have with them, or what do you tell them, especially teenagers who go through some kind of mental pressure coming around, especially in terms of relationships, because we see a lot of younger people now getting into relationships and they don't understand. Most commonly used words nowadays, even on social media, is red flag.
Yeah.
If these are the signs, you're in a red flag relationship. But it looks nice on social media, so I don't want to break up with him, or I don't want to break up with her.
Yeah.
We keep hearing all those
Yeah.
things. What is it that you advise them?
So, firstly, I think is to not trust everything that you see on social media, because people put a lot of content in just 30 seconds, 15 seconds, and they aren't even professionals or qualified people to give that kind of credentialed information out there.
Yes,
The first would be if you're comparing your partnership to something that you're seeing on social media. Social media isn't really a real place to calculate or evaluate how healthy your relationship really is.
absolutely.
For example, if when we talk about red flags, so if your partnership is not exactly a social media perfect, is not how you can compare that, this could be a red flag. A red flag is something which could be more severe in terms of maybe gaslighting or manipulation or emotional abuse, or it could be just controlling, or anything of those things which is more severe in nature as compared to feeling that your partner should always be available or your partner can never have bad days. These kind of expectations which are put out on social media, that hey, this is the idea of a perfect couple, this is the idea, you should always have so much time, you should have trips together. And that's not always possible for, yes, of course, teenagers, and of course working professionals as well. So to be aware of the reality of life is very important, to also know that people are complex people, and to see just a preferred view of them that they put on social media is something which is unfair to both you and your partner.
Absolutely correct. And something we talk about is generational trauma. Could you elaborate what that term really means and what it really is? As you just mentioned, there are a lot of people who come on social media who are not really professionals, who talk about things like this, and people believe, unfortunately, that that's the true answer. You are a professional, you're an expert in it. Could you explain to our viewers what generational trauma really means?
So generation trauma is just trauma that we take on across generations. For example, maybe if I talk about just learned behavior or learned things that I've seen from maybe my mother. So if I feel that, oh, women are taught, from a lot of age or time to sacrifice, to be more giving, to let go more easily. So that could come across something which could be in a form of generational trauma, if I'm not able to then put across my views, put across my decisions, to put across what I really want, and to blindly have a notion of love or sacrifice as an ideal form of being a caretaker or a caregiver or a partner.
Talking about a partner or a caregiver, uh, usually people who go through mental illness, caregivers also need therapy.
Right.
And very few people talk about that. What is your suggestion to it?
So I think it's, if not equal, more harder on the caregiver, because it is a lot of burden to take care of someone who is suffering from something which is severe, and something which needs attention, and also something which needs them to change the focus from themselves to the other person constantly, right? So it is very important that they also get the resources to take help. Even at the hospital I am at, we always try to talk to the caregivers, also even patients who come, so that they get a place where at least they can vent out or discuss whatever they are facing.
Sonakshi, I know you obviously can't talk about patients or anything, but in all the patients that you've had over the period of time or the experiences that you have had, something that has really stood out, a mental issue with someone that you think is needed to be talked about and is not talked about enough.
Okay, so I think very recently I saw a child with learning disability, and I think what I want to share about where it coming from a caretaker point of view. So a mother is usually someone who usually comes with the child, and in this specific case, I saw that she wasn't receiving a lot of support from the family, the husband, the in-laws, and they were also against the concept of taking therapy. So she had to fight and come to us to ask for help for her child. The husband also denied to support in that way. And what I really found beautiful was that she kept striving to support the child even though no one was with her. And the awareness she had over the weeks, as someone not from a mental health fraternity, she learned about the illness, she learned about how she could make his life easier, she learned about what are the things she can do, how he was changing from mild, the symptoms of it, the behavior therapies that could be done. So I think what's beautiful is when people try to, know about the illness or disease, and also try to form support, around it. So I think this is something which has stayed with me in the last couple of days.
which is great. Women are, as I would say, as a gender, are slightly more sympathetic towards these things. But something that women go through also a lot is postpartum depression, very less talked about. And I feel that there are very less people, even a very educated man and sometimes a very educated family also does not understand that very well. What is your take as an expert on this? What are the signs of postpartum? Because we see a lot of people, a lot of divorce rates becoming very high after having a child after 2 years or a year. And usually people are never able to point down a reason. And 30 or 30-40% of the reason is actually postpartum depression. Could you explain to our viewers what is postpartum depression, and how should a person who can see that their partner is going through a postpartum or a family member is going through, how should they react?
Right. So, firstly, postpartum depression is when you're feeling sudden sadness or grief or uneasy feelings post delivery, and basically when you have a care, you have a partner, you have family members. If you see that a woman is going through feelings where she isn't asking for help but she might need help emotionally, so first thing would be to just hear her out, right? A lot of times we don't need suggestions, we just need to be heard out, and it does solve a lot of things that are happening in our life. So I think the first thing is to give her space to share whatever she's feeling, to give her the space to feel herself, because a lot of times a lot of suggestions are thrown at people where we feel like you can do this, you can do that, but what's really required is to have that sort of unconditional support where you can give a person a space to be not okay, right? And that's so important. So
So, yeah, and therapy, that is exactly what, in a
yeah.
way, therapy is also where you can just go
Yes.
and talk, because sometimes you just need to be really heard by someone. And especially by an expert, it just helps you get the answers you're sometimes looking for. Uh, what is your suggestion, to people who refrain from going from therapy, even if they know, even though you're talking about, that it has changed, yes, it has evolved, but still we see a lot of people who refrain coming for therapy. It has not, it's not too far where you hear people say, dimagi bimari koi cheez nahi hoti. Mental illness is not an illness. Even the smartest of the lot would not like to go for therapy. Sometimes you just need to go for therapy just to feel a little better because you walk down with a lot of things.
Yes.
What is your point of view to that?
So I think first thing is to accept when you're not feeling okay is the first step towards therapy. Therapy is not something that can be forced upon someone. If you aren't feeling okay, there's no way that anyone can try to help you or reach out to you, because you're closed. You're
Yes.
closing the doors to get to a better space. So I think the first step is to accept whatever is happening would be. The second would be to just try it out. Like, just try out 2 sessions. If you feel like it won't work out for you, that's completely okay. Right? So the second thing would be to just go for a session and try it out. What's the worst that could happen? Right? What's the worst that could really happen? So I think I would just tell people to experience it for themselves instead of listening to what I am saying, because I believe that once you try it for yourself, you will see the change over a couple of months in what life has been for you, and how you can give yourself that free space in those 45 or 50 minutes to say everything that you can't share. As I feel like we all have layers that we portray to society, that who we really are. We can be so many things. I can be a therapist, I can also be a daughter, I can also be a partner, I can be so many things. But as a client on that chair, I'm just a person, I'm just who I am, Sonakshi today. So that is my space to be who I am, to feel who what I'm feeling, and to express whatever I want to express.
That's a very good note to end this conversation on, because when I thought of having a conversation with you, this is exactly what I wanted my viewers to hear from an expert, is that going for therapy or asking for help is the first way of having a better life, of feeling better about yourself, or feeling better about the person who's with you or who's not doing okay. Thank you so much for this conversation, and thank you for like helping so many people out, because it is important to live happy.
Thank you so much for having me over.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.